Thank you for taking the time to be here today.
My pleasure.
I know I speak on behalf of everyone in attendance. We're incredibly excited to hear about your journey. Before we dive in, I want to give a quick highlight reel of your many accomplishments. So the first being you are the president of television and film at Hello Sunshine. Since joining in 2019, you have produced so many... 2017, excuse me. 2017, you have produced many of Hollywood's top hits, including The Morning Show. We just heard the theme song. Big Little Lies, Daisy Jones and the Six, and... Daisy Jones and the Six, and Where the Crawdads Sing. So let's give a big applause for all of that. You've also been named TV Producer of the Year, listed in Variety's Power of Women in Hollywood list, the Hollywood Reporter's Power 100 Women in Entertainment, and you're also a mom of 2. So I could keep going, but I think it would take me all day to get through all of your list of accomplishments. Nice. So let's go ahead and dive into some questions, if that's okay. Perfect. So before we get to Hello Sunshine, I would love to hear more about how you got to where you are today. And I know that's a loaded question. So how about we start with why entertainment and how you navigated finding your start in this industry?
Well, I really wanted to be an actress. I watched movies and I was in plays for as long as I can remember. And I just sort of wanted to be a part of this world. And I was a child actress and I found my way out to LA and I had an agent and I was going on auditions and I realized it's really hard. There's a lot of rejection. If you tend to be critical of yourself, acting is probably not the right job for you. So I learned that the hard way. And then I pivoted and I kind of had to figure out what I wanted to do. And it was a circuitous journey, but I wound up sort of coming back to storytelling and realizing that what I loved about acting in plays was I felt like I changed the room. That, when an audience sits down and then they watch a play and you've changed them a little bit. So when they leave, they've thought about things that they wouldn't have thought about otherwise, or they felt things that they didn't know they were going to feel when they came in. And that was such an amazing gift and such an incredible feeling. And what I was missing was the feeling of changing the room. And what I realized is if you're behind the camera, you can also change the room. And so I found myself, I interviewed with a very prolific female producer, and she offered me her second assistant job, which was the job where you wrote the thank you notes and sent gifts and did those sorts of things. The first assistant, as it was described to me, the first assistant talks to Spielberg and the second assistant talks to travel. So I was offered the second assistant position, and I said, may I ask why you don't think I could do the first assistant job? And the answer was, you don't have agency experience. So I decided I would go get agency experience. So I went to CAA, and then I realized that what I really needed was an incredible female mentor. So I identified that in a woman named Carrie Putnam, who became one of the formative mentors of my life. She at the time was the executive vice president of HBO Films. And I interviewed to be her assistant. She was very forthright about the fact that she would be able to help me identify the job after that one, but she wouldn't be able to give it to me because she was full. She had just promoted people. There was no opportunity for growth. I said, I just want to learn from you. I just want to watch you and see how you do it because I love your taste. And it sounds like you're happily married and you have 2 pretty good kids. So I just want to watch you strike that balance. And she gave me the gift of that opportunity. And that was sort of the beginning. And then she left HBO, went to Miramax. This will come around to, I know there's going to be a question about advice. So I'll give a little bit of advice now. I was her assistant. And she got this other job opportunity. And I walked into her office and I said, I'm sure you're going to take me as your assistant, but if there's any way that you will take me as the most junior executive, I will do anything. But I would love this opportunity. And I know that if I go in as your assistant, they're not going to see me as an executive. But if you could give me that chance, I would be forever grateful. And she said, I hear you. I don't know what I'm going to be able to do, but let me see. And then the day that her deal closed, she walked by my desk. I will never forget it. And she said, HR will be calling you executive. And she gave me the chance of my lifetime. So I think that is a little piece of advice is if you want something and you feel that you've really earned the right to politely ask for it, don't be afraid to do that. And it made all the difference. And I worked for her as an executive at Miramax for 3.5 years. I then did a short stint in producing. I went back to a movie studio to 20th Century Fox. I worked there for a nice long stint. And then I noticed that the stories that I was most interested in were being told on smaller screens. So I went over to work in television at Fox Network, and I was there for a while. And then I got an incoming call from Reese Witherspoon, or from someone who knew me and Reese, to see if I would be interested in working with her at a new company called Hello Sunshine that no one had ever heard of. And the rest is history.
Amazing. Yeah. So circling back a little bit, post Miramax, you worked for Adam Shankman, 20th Century Fox, as you mentioned. How did these roles shape your career, and how did they influence how you went about storytelling and curating content?
Well, I think every single job teaches so much, right? And even if you're miserable in the job, there's always something to really take from it and to use. It's like what makes you grow, right? And so some of the people that have been the toughest bosses have given me the best advice that has really shaped who I am today. So I feel like I entered every situation from a place of gratitude and openness and excitement to learn. It's very interesting because when I was at Miramax, I was mentored exceptionally, but I was finding my footing as an executive, and I didn't have an easy time being a junior executive and deferring to others. I was very interested in being the boss. So I had to sort of calibrate that. That's always a hard thing when you have a clear point of view and some ambition, is to actually sort of, manage up to people who are not the big boss. So that was a thing that I navigated. And then when I went and I worked in producing, I loved being on set. I had a harder time with the production company job of being what people in Hollywood refer to as a D girl, where you're just sitting there and like reading a lot of scripts and giving notes, but not actually getting to be in production on things. And I actually ultimately sort of came away from that believing that I was a better buyer than seller, meaning I did a better job being at a studio than at a production company. So pretty quickly, I got an offer to go to 20th Century Fox to work at that movie studio, and I took it. So I went over to Fox. I worked on a movie called This Means War, starring Reese Witherspoon. And I met her, and it was just, I think it was somebody up there looking out for me, that they put me in her orbit where she was able to notice me. And I took my job really seriously. I was not the most popular person. I was the studio executive sitting on set, basically, minding the studio's investment. So it does not make it, you don't win a popularity contest when that's your role. But I tried to be really respectful and collaborative of everybody. And, it was very lucky for me that she noticed me. So I did that, and then TV. But I think, what I took away from each job was relationships, that I really tried hard to always be an ally and an advocate for everyone, whether it was my boss, whose interest I was representing, or it was a writer who I was giving notes to, who felt very protective of their creation, or a director who didn't want to move on, but I knew that we didn't have time to get another take. So I had to go over and say, I really, really think we have it. And if we want to make sure that we get the next scene, I think we really need to move on right now, right? But in each of these situations, making sure that I was building trusting relationships with people and showing them that I respected and admired them and felt lucky to get to do the job that I was doing in each of those different roles.
Yeah. And I think it really shows how you've curated those relationships. And it came full circle because you've mentioned this. You got a phone call one day. You're on the Fox lot, 7.5 months pregnant. And a mutual friend of you and Reese says, would you be interested in coming to Hello Sunshine and running the film and TV vertical? So can you just take us through what went through your head and what excited you about this opportunity?
Yes. I will say it was interesting because, without going into a huge amount of detail, there was an opportunity for me to stay at the network. This call came completely out of the blue, and I'll never forget. My son was 4, so I remember that I got a text that was like, "I need to talk to you about a work thing." This is a mutual friend of mine and Reese's, who was like, "I need to talk to you about a work thing. When are you available?" And I just remember that I went and sat in my car. I drove like a block away, and I was in my car where I knew it was quiet, because it was actually over the Christmas break. Mm-hmm. And this friend of ours said, "Do you know about Reese's new company?" And I said, no. I didn't. And he said, it's called Hello Sunshine. You should Google it. And I did Google it. And there were a couple of articles that were sort of announcing the company, but they were in the very beginning stages of figuring out what the company was going to be and staffing. And he said, Reese remembers you and she is interested in having you run film and television. And I said, does she know that I'm 7.5 months pregnant? And he said, yes. And I said, does she care that I'm 7.5 months pregnant? And he said, no. And I said, well, then I guess I should meet with Reese Witherspoon.
Casual.
So it was crazy and incredible. And I didn't know how in the world this happened, but I definitely felt like the luckiest person on earth. It was over the Christmas break. We wound up FaceTiming. And I remember we FaceTimed for so long that her battery died. I made sure my phone was fully charged. But I had also done a little bit of work to prepare for the conversation. So one of the things that I really thought about was, and I know that your question is sort of like, what did you think about and what did you learn and what was interesting? And I think what was terrifying was how high profile the job was. Mm-hmm. And I said to my wonderful, loving husband that this would be the most public failure imaginable. And I was so scared of the possibility of it because Big Little Lies had not yet come out, but Wild had. And I just thought to myself, oh my goodness, if I try this and I fail, how will I ever recover? My husband said, if you do not try, you will regret it for the rest of your life. So you have to bet on yourself and you have to do it. And I love him for so many reasons, but I really love him for saying that. But I think in the preparation for that interview, one of the things that I thought about is if this is to be a successful partnership, I need to make sure that we have the same taste. Mm-hmm. And if we don't have the same taste and I'm her partner and I'm her proxy, how am I ever going to build this business, right? So what I did is I made up a little game with myself, which was, and I had dry erase boards. I was very, very nerdy, but I had like a dry erase board here and a dry erase board here so that kind of like teleprompters, I could toggle when I was on the phone with her and she wouldn't realize that I was reading. But I said, I have gone to, taken the liberty of kind of guessing 10 television shows that I think Reese Witherspoon might have produced and 10 movies that I think Reese Witherspoon might have produced. And I'm just curious, would you be willing to do this exercise with me where I tell you what each of them is and we talk about if you agree that you would have produced it and if you wouldn't, can you tell me why? And so out of the 20, we were aligned on 19. There was only one that she said she wouldn't have done it. And there was a very specific reason why. And it's very interesting because as we've talked about things, there have been a couple of things that we've ultimately wound up passing on where I'm like, oh, it's the same thing. So I do think like when you get into these conversations where you're meeting with people and you're trying to figure out if it's a fit, if you ask the right questions, it will lead you to the answer and people will tell you the truth. You just have to listen. So I really do think it was an amazing exercise. And for us, it was a great way of knowing that we were really compatible. And here almost 7 years later, I do think, I just love her so much. And I feel so lucky that I think we are so aligned in heart and in mind and in our values, but really in our taste, which if you're doing a creative job is the thing that everything is going to live and die by is, do you see it the same way? If I love a book and I say to her, I think you're going to love this book. Typically she loves it, which is really nice. And the thing that's amazing about her, and I think very singular in Hollywood is if I say, I read this book, I think you're going to love it. Usually within 48 or 72 hours, she has read the book and she's texting me and she's calling me and we're talking about it, which, I think if you are a person who does the work, it's important to find people who do the work also and work with them because I think it's like a charge that you give each other, right? And if your boss inspires you or you're an inspiring boss, it's everybody brings their best and does their best when everybody's inspired to work hard. Amazing.
And you mentioned, those core shared values. And I think that's something that's so amazing about Hello Sunshine is throughout all of your ventures, you sort of have this core theme of female empowerment. And you want to see women as the heroes of their own stories, and you incorporate hope and passion, but you're also not afraid to dig into the tougher topics. And by doing this, you really showcase the entire spectrum, really, of the female experience. So can you go about how you dive into choosing which stories you tell and sort of what your role is in developing them?
Sure. Well, I mean, the thing that we talk about at Hello Sunshine is everything that we do has a woman at the center of the story. In an unconventional or unexpected way, we want to showcase that woman as the hero of her own story. That is our North Star always, no matter what we do. And then the next sort of North Star for us, if there are two, is, do we love it, right? You read something, whether it's a script or a book or a short story or, you name it, do we love it? And if the answer is no, we're probably passing. If we absolutely love it, then we're going to fight to the death to make sure it gets sold, it gets made. We are the biggest champions. And I think it is really about sort of leading with our heart when we're choosing material. Is this a book that I want to shout from the rooftops that every single person should read? Is this a show that I would want to watch? Is this a movie that I would want to watch? And I think those are the questions that we're asking ourselves first. And it's always a very inspiring conversation. And I think when we have the most amazing team of executives and assistants at Hello Sunshine, and when somebody reads something and says, this is incredible, I love it, I drop everything and I start reading it. And the rest is history, right? But then the job is really, it's kind of parenting, right? It's going through every stage of growth and development, whether it is we read a book and then we're finding the exact right writer to adapt that book, finding the director, finding the lead actress. As I walked in, we have a book that we have had adapted by a wonderful writer that we've worked with a lot in television who's never written a feature before. And we gave her the opportunity to write her first feature with us. So we've worked really closely. We then attached a director that we really love. That director had a meeting today with an actress. And, he was calling me as I was coming in here to tell me how that conversation went. And it's just really feeling like a proud and protective mom at every single stage and supporting people, giving them advice, coaching them, but really inspiring them to do their best and be their best and trying to bring together a big team. Then when we find ourselves on set, it's really making sure, we're making, I can't tell you yet because it's not announced, but we're gearing up for production on something and being in the conversation with our line producer about who's the production designer, who's the wardrobe designer, who's going to be the head of hair and makeup, what are we doing, who's our script supervisor, who's going to be our video assist, like all of these conversations. We're really in every single detail. And I think it's our job just to make sure that we assemble incredible teams and then we inspire and empower them to do their very, very best work, whether it's in development, prep, production, post, publicity, marketing, you name it. It's really about being a great partner from beginning to end. That's a producer's job.
Amazing. And you've touched on our core theme of the day, which is empower, naturally,
I feel
organically.
Very empowered by my boss. I'm so lucky to work for Reese Witherspoon and Sarah Harden, our CEO. I think they are two women who, the phrase empowered women empower women. I'm incredibly blessed to work for two women who hire people who are very talented and then they empower them to do their jobs. And women and men, at Hello Sunshine, we have the most amazing team, and I really celebrate the guys who are passionate about telling stories that center on women. What an incredible thing, right? So I think it's really just about building teams from top to bottom where everyone feels inspired and feels empowered and feels really invested in the work. I think that is a huge key to being successful.
And at Hello Sunshine, you do such a strong job of empowering the woman that you partner with. And I know Reese has told a story of how a female author texted her a photo of a home. And it turns out she is the first homeowner in her entire family. And that was because she was chosen, or her book was chosen, for one of Reese's book club picks. And the subsequent book sales allowed her to purchase a home. It's amazing. So speaking to one of your own experiences, how have you seen how Hello Sunshine's content has impacted the world around us?
Well, I feel like we're just so lucky to get to do what we do. I think one of the wonderful things, if Reese was sitting here and you recounted that story to her, she would probably have a very emotional reaction every time that we talk about it. She really, I think it really hits her right in the heart that she was able to, and that the book club was able to change somebody's life in such an important way. And I think for us, that's something that we feel so invested in doing, and feel so lucky that we have the opportunity to, recognize all of the work. We always talk about that authors are our rock stars, and to take the work of these incredible authors and screenwriters and filmmakers and just give them more and more and more opportunity and increase their profile. I mean, I think about, I have so many memories and I have so many stories of these incredible people who we've gotten to work with, who were extraordinary before we worked with them, but because we were able to sort of scream their names from the rooftop, the world now knows their name, right? And I think that's the real gift of a job like this. Certainly, the person that comes to mind for me is Tembi Locke. I don't know if any of you guys have read From Scratch, but she's the most incredible woman. And she very, very bravely wrote an exquisite memoir about love and loss and rebirth. And her sister, Attica, was working on Little Fires Everywhere. And Attica came in and was reading the pilot of Little Fires Everywhere. And it was really, there's a Yiddish word, beschert, means meant to be. It was really meant to be. But Attica was in our office reading the pilot of Little Fires Everywhere before the room started. And I walked in and I was just chatting with her. It was very casual. And I was just like, what the world needs is like a great story about a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law. I don't feel like you've seen Monster-in-Law, but there hasn't been a drama that really explores the complexity of that relationship. And I just wish that I could find one of those. I'm reading one. It's like, okay, not great. And she was like, well, if you want to read a really great story about a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law, you should read my sister's book. Now, when you're in a job like mine and someone says you should read my sister's book, it usually does not end in a highly successful limited series on Netflix that becomes a bit of a phenomenon. But I was like, sure, I'll read your sister's book. Like I went into, great, she said, it's called From Scratch. And I was like, I actually really like that title. And then she pitched it to me and I thought, oh, it kind of sounds amazing. But let's see, right? So I sent it over to Emily, our executive, and I said, can you do me a favor? Just dive into it. If you get 100 pages in and you're liking it, let me know and I'll dive in. And Emily immediately read it because she's the best. And she was like, I think I love it. And I remember over Labor Day weekend sitting at a pool and sobbing, reading this book and just saying to Emily and saying to Reese, we have to do this. And having this conversation with Attica and Tembi about telling this story and how do you take such a personal story and bring it to life on screen. And Tembi was going to adapt it and people were courting her to make a movie. And I said, I don't think it's a movie. I don't want to give that much of the story away. I think this is episodic. I think we need to really go into the details of this story so that we can see and feel every single thing. So we convinced her to make it a limited series. I said I would really like your sister to write it with you because I don't want to give you notes on your life story, but I can totally give your sister notes and she'll know everything and she'll be protective of you, but she also really will help us to navigate this. And Attica and Tembi together created that show and Zoe Saldana starred in it. And we brought that story to life in a way that I think really honored her lived experience and held it really gently, respectfully. But I think, I think it changed her life. And I think it was a dream of hers and maybe even a dream that she couldn't have articulated when she wrote the memoir. I think she wrote the memoir because it needed to be written. But then the rest of it was really a journey that we went on together. And I feel like that's just an example of the kind of incredible, gratifying experience that we've been able to have. And I think working with authors like Celeste Ng and Taylor Jenkins Reid and so many others, Laura Dave, what a privilege to get to work with these incredible authors and then to be trusted to take their beautiful stories and bring them to life.
I also sobbed when I watched it, if it's any comfort, like full ugly tears.
I was going to say, I loved all the TikToks of people just like bawling.
Oh, yeah.
It was really
it was one of the many. So shifting gears a little bit, you said that Hello Sunshine's culture focuses on collaboration, not competition.
Yes.
So can you talk about how you support this goal internally with your employees, but also externally with your creative partners?
Yes. Well, Hollywood is a really competitive place, as I'm sure all of you guys are very well aware. And I think sharp elbows are far too common. And I've worked in a lot of places where it's just been fiercely competitive. And to be honest, I'm not inspired by that. I think that there are a lot of cultures where people believe that if you can like win at the Game of Thrones, that's the point of it. And I think it's really not. I think we all can learn from each other, and we've all got really extraordinary things to contribute. So how do we work together, and how do we learn and grow, and how do we stay curious? And so that's always been really a fundamental part of the job. And what was very interesting for me, I will say, coming into this job is I didn't know how to lead. And I'm, again, very, very blessed that Reese and Sarah care enough about the culture of a place to invest in leadership training. And I have a corporate coach that they got for me who has transformed me as a leader and really helped me to get rid of a lot of the behaviors that I didn't realize I had learned, because I think there is nature, but there's a lot of nurture. And I think if you grow up working on certain desks and being a part of cultures that are competitive, it's ingrained in you, whether you realize it or not. And so what we've done really intentionally is create a culture where you are rewarded for collaboration, where the expectation and the hope and the desire is that when you don't have the answer, or even if you think you have the answer, but you're not 100% sure, you're going to go walk over to your colleague and you're going to say, hey, can I run this past you? I'd love to get your thoughts. I want to show you this writer's list. Did I miss anybody? I like this book. Will you read this book and tell me if you like the book too before I go to Lauren? You know that person isn't going to read the book and say, I'm stealing it from you. Which, by the way, happened to me when I was a junior executive. I remember there was a project that I championed and I paid for myself to go to Sundance. And I came back and I saw that one of my colleagues had done a director's list for that project and had sort of elbowed me out of the process of working on it. And I was so devastated. And I really felt like if I was ever the boss, I would not let that happen. And so I feel really lucky that I get to be the boss, and that I don't think that Hello Sunshine is a place where that happens. And I also think, on our sets, we really try to foster environments of collaboration. I think if you look at Daisy Jones and the Six, if you watched any of the interviews of all of the extraordinary people behind the scenes who wound up getting nominated for Emmys for their incredible work, whether it was production design, music supervision, makeup, wardrobe, and on, these are people who really worked together. And when you talk to Denise Wingate about her wardrobe design, she talks about how inextricably linked her design was with the design of Jessica Kender, who was designing the sets that they were talking about at Soldier Field. What's Soldier Field going to look like? And that's going to influence what each of the band members are wearing. And that, and then the makeup and what are they wearing? And that's going to influence the way that we're, designing the makeup and the hair. And I just think if you can bring everybody together and make them realize that when the band plays together beautifully, everybody can shine. We can give everybody their solo, and it's great to do it, but also it's really about the beauty of the collaboration and what we're capable of when we all come together.
It's amazing. And you'll be happy to know one of Anderson's core values is shared success. So some parallels between us and Hello Sunshine.
Empowering shared success. I like it.
Exactly. A couple of years ago, Blackstone-backed Candle Media acquired a majority stake in Hello Sunshine in a deal valued at over $900 million. Massive deal. Can you tell us a little bit of how this deal has impacted your day-to-day business?
To be honest, I think they've just really provided a huge amount of encouragement and support for us. I think that we were always dreaming big and we were always innovating. And then when Blackstone came in and invested and believed in us, I think it was just an incredibly exciting moment for all of us, because we realized that what we were doing really was impactful. It really was meaningful, that we had come such a long way from me sort of Googling Hello Sunshine. We had really successfully created this brand. And I think having their support in continuing to grow our flywheel has been essential to our success. And I think we've just built out this incredible team. And it's really been an exciting and inspiring process to see the ways that we're able to ignite that flywheel and really grow together.
Amazing. And looking forward, where do you see Hello Sunshine going in the next 5 to 10 years? And what are your aspirations in terms of cultural impact, platform expansion, and the stories you continue to tell?
Well, I think that it does come back to the flywheel that I mentioned, because if you think about Hello Sunshine, I think in the beginning, probably you thought about just book club and film and television, maybe, but now it's really like we have this incredible DTC business and brand, and we have music, and we have unscripted, and we're building out a YA division. And it's really about how can we make sure that we are highlighting female-driven stories across all mediums. So we have a podcast that's going to be beginning really soon called The Bright Side, just thinking about all of these different ways that we can connect with our audience and that we can hear their stories, we can share our stories, and we can really just be in conversation with a female audience. And I think growing the conversation, increasing the impact. And I think, we're constantly talking about ways that we can effectively scale without diluting the impact of what we're doing or in any way lowering the bar for excellence, because I do think so much of it comes down to trust. Right? That if you guys know that Hello Sunshine made a television show, you might choose to watch it because you like what we do. And that's really amazing. And we can't betray your trust. So I think we're just holding the bar incredibly high, but being really thoughtful about ways that we can effectively scale so that we are reaching more and more people in the ways that they want to be engaging with us and with our platform. And it seems like a very exciting time. We're really excited about everything that's happening and everything that's yet to come.
And I know I can speak on behalf of everyone here, especially after today's talk. We can't wait to see what Hello Sunshine does and continues to do. Before we get into the Q&A portion of today's discussion, one last question. What is the best piece of advice you've ever been given? And what is one piece of advice you would like to share with those in attendance today?
I think that the best piece of advice that I've ever been given was given to me by Reese. And it was, whatever the conversation is that you are dreading, have it. Whatever is weighing on you, just go for it. Have the hard conversation. You will feel better after you've had it. And I think when she said it, it really impacted me. And I think it has really impacted my life on a daily basis, that I don't let fear of talking about the hard stuff dictate my behavior. And I'm a terrible sleeper. My brain doesn't shut off. So I have a very hard time sleeping through the night, but I lost a lot of sleep because I would be overthinking these conversations that I was scared to have. And then I kind of realized, just dive into the deep end of the pool, just have that conversation. It is going to be hard, but it isn't going to get easier if I wait a week and I stay up every night, feeling very nervous and anticipating what might happen when we have the conversation, right? So it is about just diving into those conversations. And I think for me, realizing that it's important to be honest, to be accountable, to approach conversations with openness and curiosity for the other person's point of view, and really just try to hear them and be engaged in the dialogue, no matter how intense or challenging it is, because sometimes the conversations are easier than you expect them to be, and sometimes they are really hard, but it's very important to have them. So I think that's an incredibly important and valuable piece of advice that I've received. And I think that the piece of advice that I would give you guys really ties back to the fact that Reese sat on a set with me in 2010 and had someone call me in 2017. Or actually, it was the end of 2016. But, she had somebody call me 6 years later because she remembered me. Because the way that I showed up on that set had some sort of an impact, right? I was working hard. I was taking the job really seriously. I cared deeply. However it was that I presented myself or behaved on set, she took note. And I didn't know that. And so I think it would just be to you guys in whatever work environment you're in, assume that somebody's watching. Bring your best self every single day. If you don't love the job, find a different job that you love. Life is really short. Do work that you love, but when you get to do work that you love, work really, really hard, and people will notice. And I think that's true in any job, no matter how junior or senior. If you love your job, if you're passionate about your work, and if you work really hard, people will notice.
Amazing. That was such a great note to end on before we open it up to the audience. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for being here today. This was a really interesting conversation, especially I think because a lot of us are in entrepreneurship or the startup world. So hearing from a corporate perspective is actually really interesting, because I think it sounds like movie making and making these productions are very much like a startup. Like
very entrepreneurial.
Yes. And so my question for you is, have you ever worked with actual entrepreneurs who've had experience, building businesses? Do you have them on your payroll? Are they any of your bosses or mentors? Because I think there's a lot of jumping back and forth of women here that I did my MBA with, who have gone from corporate to startup, back to corporate and bounced back. Have you worked with anyone who has been an entrepreneur? And if so, do you have a story about it, I guess is all I'm asking.
Well, it's an interesting question. I don't know that I'm going to answer it directly in the way that you want, but I think that every single person, when I went to Miramax as a creative executive, we didn't even have computers. It was not the Weinstein Miramax. It was when Disney had acquired Miramax, and Carrie, who was my mentor that I worked for at HBO, came in to be president of production. But we came into empty offices, and we built that. The team at Miramax, we built it from the ground up, right? It was an incredible experience, and probably the thing that helped me to know how to do what we've done at Hello Sunshine, right? Getting to watch this extraordinary woman lead a team doing just that. And I think coming to Hello Sunshine, every single department head is an entrepreneur, right? So whether it's Maureen Polo, who's running our DTC and brand, or it's Sarah Ray running Unscripted, or it's what I'm doing, or it's our book club, every single one of the people that's running these verticals has essentially built it from the ground up. So I guess that what I would say to you is, whether you are being entrepreneurial inside of a structure, or you're being entrepreneurial and it's just you and your great idea and your computer or whatever resources you have, I think it's quite similar, just in terms of understanding what your goal is, understanding what the focus is, having longer term goals, but having really specific, measurable daily goals. I have a buck slip that has all of our projects on it. And every single day I look at that project buck slip and I think to myself, is there something I can do to advance the ball on every single one of these projects? And if there's something that I can do, I'm doing it. And I'm hopefully inspiring the executives who are the day-to-day on each of these things to do exactly the same. And if there's nothing that I can do, I'm asking myself why. And if it's one of the things that we talk about a lot on set, because sets are very collaborative environments where the AD basically is the person who's running the set, right? And so the analogy that we use with the first AD is the first AD is the one that keeps the ball in the air, and it's their job to make sure that the ball never drops, but they've got to know where the ball is. And if the ball looks like it's dropping, they're going in and they're keeping it up and they're keeping it moving, and they're the one that's making sure that you're making your day. I think in a way, our job is to always keep the ball in the air. And if it looks like it's dropping, why? Who was I trusting to keep the ball in the air? And how can I have a conversation with them, which is, hey, I'm just checking in. I know the script was due on this date. It feels like it's taking a bit longer. Is there anything that I can do to be supportive and helpful? Would you like me to read what you've done so far? How can I best help? But always keep the ball in the air.
Hi, thank you so much for coming here today. You mentioned that you got coaching from a corporate coach and that there were things you had to unlearn. I was just curious about what some of those habits were that you had to unlearn or maybe change. If you'd be open to sharing. Thank you.
It's my pleasure to answer that question carefully. I grew up in environments where I was always looking like this because I didn't know who had the knife and what the move was, and if I was safe or if I was about to get stabbed in the back. I do think that a lot of times that is what happens in Hollywood, unfortunately. So when I came into Hello Sunshine, I think, to be honest, I just had to relax and I had to share. I had to give away responsibility. I was very nervous. I felt like I had to hold things and I had to control things in order for them to get done a certain way. And I remember my amazing, amazing, amazing coach who I truly, I just think there's no pedestal high enough for her. Her name is Lisa Blosser and I love her so much. Lisa changed my life, but Lisa said to me, she got to know me really well. And then she did a presentation, which was at the start of a year. She had been coaching me for probably 6 months or so. And then it was the beginning of the year. And she said, okay, I've done this presentation of where I think we are and where I want to go by the end of the year. And there were a couple of slides in the presentation that have really stuck with me. One of them was Michael Jordan. And she said, this is where you are. And this is where I want you to go. And it was Phil Jackson with the huddle. And she said, I want you to work on getting off the court. And I said, I really love being on the court. And she said, if it's a three-pointer that's going to win the game, go do it. But otherwise, I want you on the sidelines coaching people. I want you inspiring them. I want you telling them what they've got to do to get the ball in the basket so they can feel what it feels like. That's your job now. And I had gone for so long feeling like I had to hog the ball and prove to everybody that I could play that I had a really hard time making that transition, but doing it has been incredibly gratifying. And the other thing that was in the presentation was this video, and it was like this clip of someone playing, I think it was a cello. And it was like they're playing the cello and then the coach is standing next to them, or the instructor, and they made a terrible mistake. Like, it sounded awful. And the teacher started laughing and he said, how wonderful. And then it was just like, isn't that interesting? And then she paused it and she said, what did you think of that? And I was like, I don't even understand. Like, what are you talking about? And she said, the only way that you learn, the only way you improve is by making mistakes. So embrace your mistakes and embrace the mistakes of others and get to a point where when someone makes a mistake, you can laugh about it and you can say how wonderful, how interesting, and you can celebrate the mistake because it's an opportunity to learn. And it has been such a hard thing for me to do because I definitely, if anyone is like in the Enneagram world, I'm like a real strong 8 and I've got some 1 and like I'm like the person that's action oriented and then the 1 is a little perfectionistic. So it was very hard for me to celebrate mistakes and to hold things in a lighter way and to be amused. But it has been so gratifying. And when someone makes a mistake, just being able to sort of say like, what'd you learn? Wow, you're totally right. That was not great. What'd you learn? And then it doesn't ever happen again. And it's amazing. And they learned, and it wasn't the end of the world. We all went on. So I just think, if you can find yourself a coach, do it. But those are some of the things that I've learned. Of course.
You have a question in the back right there. Hi, my name is Annette. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Annette.
And thank you so much for talking about the value of coaching. I'm a coach, so that sounds amazing to me. And my question is, one, I don't know if your company paid for the coaching or contributed to it, but If so, do you have any recommendations for people in this room to encourage that as a perk when they are joining a new organization, or to ask their managers for that? So if you can talk
yes,
to
ask
how—
for it.
Yes.
I mean, truly, I think that you have to be at a certain level in order to get it. And what I've wound up doing with our group is Lisa will come in and work with our team. She will also work with our senior leadership team. She will work with, we have leadership cohorts. So, even if you're at a more junior level at the company and you're not getting the kind of consistent one-on-one coaching that the very senior executives might be getting, there is an opportunity, I think, to be coached. And I think it's something that I wish more companies were doing. I think it really ultimately comes back to the values and the culture of a place. And I think there are a lot of companies that don't really care about a healthy culture. They feel like if people are very competitive, then they're going to do their best work, and it's very Darwinian. And that is one way to run a company. I don't think it's the best way to run a company. So I think that when we talk about advocacy and asking for things, I do think that inquiring about if there is any coaching or any resources along those lines that are available, even if it isn't one-on-one coaching, if somebody's going to come in and there's a seminar, and you can do a leadership seminar. We did a seminar for our team recently on executive presence and what does it look like to present as an executive. And that was very interesting, I think, for all of these members of my team, where, you're trying and you're making assumptions, but you're not actually having a person who is an expert in that talk to you about what does it mean, whether it's the way that you dress or it's the way that you hold yourself or your shoulders back, and do you upward inflect at the end of your sentences? Do you say like I just did? How do you start managing your own behavior and being aware of the way that you're presenting? And I thought that was really an important thing for the next generation to be thinking about as they're growing and stepping up into leadership.
All righty. I think that's all we have for today. Thank you so much again for coming. This has been an amazing discussion.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for the great question.